which have no sugar in them, and in fact have nothing in them. Like, they're basically just packets full of acrid color dust. My name's Emily, and I'm on the events team at the Ann Arbor District Library, and today we are going to dye some yarn with Kool-Aid. I'm a big knitter, big lover of yarn, knitted this sweater, but I've never dyed yarn. And it's one of those things that is kind of interesting to me, but also seems kind of messy and like a lot of work and maybe kind of expensive. And I was looking for a really low stakes way to try out yarn dyeing. So, being the Ann Arbor District Library card holder that I am, I hopped on over to Creativebug and I found a Kool-Aid yarn dyeing class. I am fully aware that this is really something that you would do with kids, and it's kind of weird for me just to be an adult alone in my kitchen using Kool-Aid to dye yarn. But at the end of the day, specifically this day, I will have a better understanding of whether or not yarn dyeing is something that I'm interested in doing. So it could be that I make up some amazing shades of Kool-Aid colors and it's awesome and I love it. Or it could be that I get to the end of this day and I say, that was really not worth it. I will continue to buy my yarn pre-dyed, thank you very much. So I'm going to show you how to hop onto the Creativebug database through aadl.org, and then we're going to get started with some yarn dyeing. To get to Creativebug, start on aadl.org. Scroll down to the databases link, then scroll down to Creativebug. You'll be asked to supply your library credentials, and then you'll have access to Creativebug's library. From there, the easiest way to find Melanie Follick's Kool-Aid yarn dyeing class is to search for it. First, I prepared my yarn. This whopping skein is 218 grams, so I did the math to divide it evenly into separate skeins by weight. I like using an office chair for this instead of wrapping it around my arm like in the tutorial, because it makes a skein that is longer and thinner so the yarn isn't all bunched up on itself. Once each skein is at the right weight, I loosely tie it with 4 pieces of contrasting color yarn.
Okay. It's 9 a.m. Wednesday morning. It's 29 degrees. Let's buy some Kool-Aid. Okay. There we go.
Once I'm ready to dye, I start by soaking each skein for at least 30 minutes. You can see that wool is ornery when you try to get it wet, and if I threw it in the dye pot while it was still dry, it probably wouldn't take up the dye. You can see that as the yarn goes in the dye pot, it's very pale while the water is very dark. As it simmers on the stove, the water gets lighter and the yarn gets darker. For me, in most cases, the water never became totally clear, but I just took the yarn out when it looked like no more dye was being absorbed. Because I really only had one pot big enough for this project and I wanted 5 different colors, I had to do the skeins one at a time. I started with a basic red, orange, yellow, green, and blue,
but with the exception of the red, I mixed the colors together to get closer to the shades I wanted.
So here I am, and I knit these colors into a sweater. That's not true. I did not dye this yarn, but I did dye this yarn. So the experience of making this was really informative and really interesting. I'm really surprised at the range of colors that I was able to get, especially since I was starting from just 5 basic colors, and I was kind of able to mix them and get some subtlety that I don't think I would have been able to otherwise. And I have to say, it was really cool to go from this to this. That being said, would I do this again? For me personally, probably not. And it's not in any way a fault of the Creativebug tutorial. That was amazing. It gave me all the information that I needed to do it. I think for me, one of the biggest challenges I had was that I really only had one big stock pot. And I did have some smaller cooking pots, but I was kind of afraid to try it and then waste a bunch of Kool-Aid and water and get a poorly dyed skein. So I just ended up using my one big pot, and it took really long because of that. So if you're gonna do this, I would definitely recommend having at least 2 pots. That will make it go a lot more quickly. I'm really glad that I did it in the winter. It really warmed up my kitchen, and also having this simmering pot of water on my stovetop for 4 hours, plus all of these wet skeins that were drying out, it really added a lot to the humidity of my house. Another thing that was a con for me, which I think is just going to be true of pretty much any kind of dyeing you're doing, is that it uses a lot of water. But I also know that with textile production in general, dyeing is definitely one of the least environmentally friendly parts of the process. All that being said, I think this is a really fun craft that you could do, not just with kids, but you could get together and do this with your friends. In any case, I hope you guys enjoy this. I hope you learned a little something, and I will see you next time.